Princess Zara lived in a world beyond our wildest dreams. Her planet, called Ethros, was filled with crystal towers that touched the clouds and gardens that glow with their own light. The people there could read minds and had powers that seemed like magic to us. But despite all this wonder, Zara was bored out at 24. She was third in line to become queen, but that felt like a distant dream. Her older siblings were more serious and responsible, while Zara preferred adventure and excitement. She often got into trouble for questioning the old ways and suggesting new ideas. That made the royal advisors nervous. The trouble started during the yearly harvest festival, the biggest celebration on Ethros. The entire kingdom gathered in the Grand Plaza, where floating lights danced in the air and music played without any instruments. Everyone wore their finest robes that shimmered like starlight, and the smell of exotic foods filled the air. Zara was standing with her cousin, Prince Kale, watching the festivities. Kale was only 2 years older than her, but he acted like he knew everything about the universe. He had always been jealous of how much the people loved Zara's free spirit, while they found him cold and calculating. The conversation that changed everything started innocently enough. They were watching a group of children play a game that required quick thinking and teamwork. Zara mentioned how it reminded her of something she had seen on Earth, a planet their people had been quietly observing for centuries. "Those humans are more clever than most people think," Zara said. Watching the children solve a puzzle together, "I've been studying their behavior, and they have qualities that even surprise me." Kale laughed, but it wasn't a kind laugh. "Humans? Those primitive creatures who still fight wars over resources we consider worthless? Please, Zara. They can barely manage their own planet without destroying it. That's exactly what I mean." Zara replied, her voice getting stronger. "They face impossible challenges every day, yet they keep trying. They don't have our mental powers or advanced technology, but they survive through pure determination and heart." "Heart?" Kale scoffed. "You mean emotion, which clouds judgment and leads to poor decisions. That's exactly why they're inferior." Other royal family members began gathering around them, sensing an interesting debate. Zara felt her competitive nature kicking in. She had always hated when people underestimated others, and Kale's arrogance was particularly annoying tonight. "I've been watching one human in particular," she continued, "a doctor who works in their emergency healing centers. The things he accomplishes without any special powers are incredible. He saves lives every day, works longer hours than any of our healers, and still finds energy to care about each patient personally." Kale's eyes gleamed with mischief. He had found an opportunity to embarrass his popular cousin in front of the royal court. "If you're so confident about human superiority, why don't we make this interesting?" The crowd grew larger. Even some of the royal advisors stopped their conversations to listen. Zara felt all eyes on her, and her pride wouldn't let her back down. "What kind of wager?" she asked, though part of her already regretted the question. "Simple," Kale said smoothly. "You spend 1 month studying this human doctor more closely. If you can prove that he possesses abilities or qualities that genuinely surpass what we Ethrosians can do, I'll publicly acknowledge your wisdom. I'll even support your request for a higher position in the royal court." The offer was tempting. Zara had been trying to gain more influence in kingdom decisions for years, but the council always said she was too young and inexperienced. Having Kale's support would change everything. "And if I can't prove it?" she asked. Though she was already certain she would win, Kale's smile became wider and more dangerous. "Then you accept whatever cultural learning experience the royal council thinks would benefit your education about leadership and humility." The vague wording should have warned Zara, but she was too excited by the challenge. She had been observing this particular human doctor for weeks already. Fascinated by his dedication and skill, she was convinced that a month of closer study would provide all the evidence she needed. "Done," she said, reaching out to shake Kel's hand in the traditional way of sealing agreements. The crowd cheered, excited to see how this unusual bet would play out. Even the king and queen, Zara's parents, seemed amused by their daughter's bold confidence. For the next month, Zara spent hours each day watching Dr. Alex Chen through their advanced observation technology. Alex worked at Seattle General Hospital, one of the busiest medical centers on Earth. What she saw amazed her even more than she had expected. Alex typically worked 12-hour shifts, but often stayed longer when emergency cases arrived. She watched him perform complex surgeries with steady hands, make life-saving decisions in seconds, and somehow remember personal details about hundreds of patients. When a terrible accident brought multiple victims to his hospital at once, he worked for 18 straight hours without rest, saving every single person. But what impressed Zara most was something their technology couldn't measure easily: his emotional strength. She saw him comfort frightened children, support worried families, and even help his exhausted colleagues when he was tired himself. Despite facing death and suffering every day, he never became cold or uncaring. Zara documented everything carefully, building a strong case for human resilience and capability. She was so confident in her evidence that she didn't notice Kel's suspicious behavior. During the final week of their bet. Unknown to Zara, Kale had been meeting privately with several Royal Council members, particularly the older ones who worried about her rebellious influence on young Ethrosians. He convinced them that Zara's fascination with humans was becoming unhealthy, and that she needed to learn proper respect for their superior civilization. When the month ended, Zara presented her findings to the royal court with great enthusiasm. She showed videos of Alex's incredible work, explained the challenges he faced, and argued passionately about human potential. But Kale was ready with his counter-argument. He had carefully selected only the moments when Alex made small mistakes or showed tiredness. He emphasized every human limitation and weakness, making it seem like Zara had been naive and overly emotional in her assessment. Worse yet, some of the council members were already prepared to side with Kale. They declared that Zara's month of observation had actually proven human inferiority, since she had become too emotionally invested in her subject to judge objectively. "This is exactly the problem with Princess Zara's thinking," announced the chief advisor, an old man who had never liked Zara's modern ideas. "She allows emotion to cloud her judgment, just like the humans she admires." Zara felt the ground falling away beneath her. She tried to argue, but the decision was already made. The royal court ruled that she had lost the bet. "Now," said the queen, Zara's own mother, "you must accept the cultural learning experience the council deems appropriate for your growth." The punishment they announced was unlike anything in royal history. Zara would be sent to Earth for 1 full year, with most of her powers removed. She would have to live as a human, supporting herself with their primitive resources, and to truly understand the species she had defended, she would need to participate in their most important bonding ritual, something humans call marriage. "You will learn firsthand whether these humans are as remarkable as you believe," the chief advisor said with satisfaction. "When you return, we expect you will have gained proper perspective on the superiority of our civilization." Zara's heart sank as she realized what Kale had done. He hadn't just won a bet, he had maneuvered the entire royal court into punishing her for her beliefs. She looked at her cousin's satisfied face and knew that this had been his plan all along. But there was no way out now. The royal decree was final, and arguing would only make things worse. As the court dismissed and people began congratulating Kale on his victory, Zara stood alone, wondering how her confidence in human nature had led to her own exile. Little did she know that her real education was about to begin, and it would teach her things about both humans and herself that would change her life forever. 3 days after the royal court's decision, Zara found herself standing in a strange metal chamber, surrounded by Ethrosian scientists who looked at her with a mixture of pity and curiosity. They were preparing her for the journey to Earth, and each step made her punishment feel more real. "Hold still, princess," said the lead scientist as she attached glowing devices to Zara's temples. "We need to limit your telepathic abilities to almost nothing. You'll only be able to sense very strong emotions from humans, and only when you're touching them." Zara winced as she felt her mental powers fading away. It was like losing one of her senses. The constant background hum of thoughts and feelings from everyone around her suddenly went quiet, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her mind. Your shape-shifting will be restricted too, the scientist continued. You can change your appearance to look human, but that's all. No creating tools. No healing faster than they do. No enhanced strength. They gave her a new identity, Riley Nova, a 24-year-old graduate student studying languages at the University of Washington. She had a small apartment near the campus, a bank account with enough money to survive for a year, and official documents that would pass any human inspection. Remember, warned the chief advisor, who had come to see her off, you must find a human willing to marry you within 6 months, and the marriage must last the full year. No exceptions. The transportation to Earth was the last time Zara would experience Etherosian technology for a long time. One moment she was standing in the familiar crystal chamber on her home planet, and the next she was alone in a tiny apartment that smelled like old paint, and something she couldn't identify. The first thing that hit her was the noise, even through the closed windows. She could hear cars honking, people shouting, music playing, and a dozen other sounds all mixing together. On Ethros, cities were designed for peace and quiet. This chaos made her head pound. Then came the smells. Earth's air was filled with exhaust fumes, cooking food, and other scents that seemed harsh compared to the clean, flower-scented atmosphere of her home world. She opened a window hoping for relief, but it only made things worse. The apartment itself was tiny compared to her palace rooms. It had a small bedroom, a cramped kitchen, and a living area that could barely fit a couch and table. The walls were painted an ugly beige color, and the carpet was worn thin in several places. Zara sat on the hard couch and felt homesickness wash over her like a wave. But feeling sorry for herself wouldn't complete her mission. She needed to find the human she had studied, Dr. Alex Chen, and somehow convince him to marry her. The thought made her stomach twist with nervousness and guilt. Her first attempt to leave the apartment was a disaster. She had studied human clothing through their observation technology, but actually wearing it felt strange and uncomfortable. The shoes pinched her feet. The jeans were stiff and restrictive, and she couldn't figure out how humans walked normally in such awkward garments. The grocery store overwhelmed her completely. The fluorescent lights were too bright. The aisles were crowded with products she didn't recognize, and the checkout process confused her so much that she left without buying anything. A kind elderly woman noticed her distress and helped her figure out how to use the payment system, but Zara felt embarrassed and helpless. She spent the first week mostly hiding in her apartment, ordering food delivery and trying to understand human television shows. Everything seemed so violent and dramatic compared to Ethrosian entertainment. Even their comedies were full of people being mean to each other for laughs. Finally, desperation forced her to venture out again. She had located Seattle General Hospital and knew Alex's schedule from her previous observations. Her plan was simple: create a situation where they would meet naturally, then use her charm and intelligence to win his interest. But when she actually saw him in person for the first time, her careful plan fell apart. Alex was coming out of the hospital after what looked like a long shift. His dark hair was messy, his scrubs were wrinkled, and he looked exhausted. But when he noticed an elderly man struggling with a heavy bag near the bus stop, Alex immediately went over to help. Zara watched from across the street as Alex not only carried the man's groceries, but also waited with him until the bus arrived, making friendly conversation the whole time. When the bus pulled up, Alex made sure the elderly man got on safely and even paid his fare when the man couldn't find his wallet. That small act of kindness, which Alex clearly thought nothing of, made Zara's chest feel tight with an emotion she couldn't name. This was exactly the kind of behavior that had impressed her during her observations. But seeing it in person felt different somehow. She followed Alex at a distance as he walked to a nearby coffee shop. This was her chance. She had rehearsed what to say, how to bump into him accidentally, and how to start a conversation. But when she walked into the coffee shop and saw him sitting alone at a corner table, reviewing what looked like medical charts, her courage evaporated. Instead, She ordered a drink she had never heard of, something called a latte, and sat at a table, where she could watch him without being obvious. Alex was completely focused on his work, occasionally making notes or frowning at particularly difficult cases. Even during his break time, he was thinking about his patients. Zara was so busy studying him that she didn't notice her coffee getting cold, or the barista cleaning tables around her. She certainly didn't expect what happened next. A car outside ran a red light and crashed into another vehicle right in front of the coffee shop. The sound was tremendous, metal crushing, glass breaking, and people screaming. Everyone in the shop rushed to the windows to see what had happened, but Alex didn't just look. He was out the door before anyone else had even processed what was happening. Zara followed the crowd outside and watched in amazement as Alex took control of the chaotic scene. One driver was clearly injured, bleeding from a cut on his forehead and unable to get out of his car. Alex climbed through the passenger side and began checking the man's injuries, talking to him in a calm, reassuring voice. "I'm a doctor," he said. "You're going to be okay. Can you tell me your name?" while keeping the injured man conscious and still. Alex somehow managed to direct other bystanders to help. He sent someone to direct traffic around the accident, asked another person to call for ambulances, and got a woman with nursing experience to help with the second driver, who was shaken but less seriously hurt. The whole time, Alex never seemed panicked or overwhelmed. He moved with practiced efficiency, making quick decisions that probably saved the injured man's life. When the paramedics arrived, he gave them a clear, detailed report of the man's condition and the treatment he had provided. Zara stood on the sidewalk, forgotten in the crowd, watching this display of exactly what she had tried to explain to the royal court. Alex had no special powers, no advanced technology, no mental abilities beyond what any human possessed. Yet he had just handled an emergency better than many Ethrosian healers could have, with all their advantages. But what struck her most was something her observations had never captured: the emotional cost of his compassion. As the ambulances drove away and the crowd dispersed, Zara saw Alex lean against a lamppost for a moment, running his hands through his hair. His shoulders sagged with exhaustion, and she could see that helping others took something out of him every time. That realization hit her like a physical blow. Alex chose to give of himself constantly, knowing it was difficult and draining, because he believed it was right. There was no glory in it, no special reward, just the quiet satisfaction of making a difference. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zara felt ashamed of her mission. This man deserved honesty and genuine affection, not manipulation from an alien princess trying to fulfill a punishment. But she was trapped. She had to complete her task or remain exiled forever. As Alex disappeared back into the coffee shop to collect his forgotten work, Zara realized her biggest challenge wouldn't be winning his heart. It would be living with herself while she did it. After witnessing the car accident, Zara knew she couldn't waste any more time feeling guilty about her mission. She had only 6 months to get married, and she had already lost 2 weeks hiding in her apartment. If she didn't act soon, she would be stuck on Earth forever. The next morning, she positioned herself at the same coffee shop, determined to actually talk to Alex this time. She had practiced her introduction dozens of times in the mirror, working on sounding natural and casual. When Alex walked in and ordered his usual black coffee, she took a deep breath and made her move. "Excuse me," she said, approaching his table with what she hoped was a friendly smile. "Weren't you the doctor who helped with that car accident yesterday? That was really incredible what you did." Alex looked up from his medical journals, and Zara felt her rehearsed words disappear from her mind. Up close, his eyes were warm and kind, but she could see the tiredness that came from constantly caring for others. "Oh, that," he said, seeming genuinely surprised that anyone had noticed. "I just did what anyone would do. Are you okay? You look a little nervous." Zara realized she was fidgeting with her coffee cup and forced herself to relax. "I'm fine. I'm Riley, by the way, Riley Nova. I'm new to Seattle, and I don't really know anyone yet." "Alex Chen," he replied, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Would you like to sit? You said you're new to the city. For the next hour. Zara found herself in the strangest conversation of her life. She had to constantly catch herself before mentioning things that didn't exist on Earth, or using knowledge that Riley Nova shouldn't have. But Alex made it easy by asking simple questions and actually listening to her answers. She told him her cover story about being a graduate student in linguistics, and he seemed genuinely interested in her studies. When she mentioned struggling to adjust to city life, he offered to show her around some of his favorite places in Seattle. There's this great bookstore in Pike Place Market, he said. And if you like coffee, which I'm guessing you do since you're here, there are some amazing local roasters that tourists never find. Zara agreed to meet him that weekend, and as she walked home, she felt a confusing mix of emotions. The plan was working. Alex seemed attracted to her and wanted to spend more time together. But she also felt terrible about lying to someone who was being so genuinely kind to her. Their first official date was supposed to be simple. Alex picked her up in his old Honda and drove her to Pike Place Market, chattering about the history of different neighborhoods and pointing out landmarks. But Zara was distracted by how different everything looked at street level, compared to the aerial view she was used to from Ethrosian surveillance. The market itself was overwhelming in the best possible way. The fish vendors were throwing salmon back and forth while customers laughed and took pictures. Artists displayed paintings and jewelry along the sidewalks. The smell of fresh flowers mixed with coffee and baked goods created an atmosphere unlike anything on her home planet. Alex seemed to know everyone. He stopped to chat with a flower vendor who asked about his mother's health, bought books from an elderly man who remembered his name, and got them both samples from a cheese shop, where the owner treated him like family. How do you know so many people? Zara asked as they sat on a bench overlooking the water, sharing a bag of mini donuts. Alex shrugged, looking a little embarrassed. I've lived here my whole life, and I guess I just like talking to people. Everyone has interesting stories if you take time to listen. That simple statement revealed so much about his character that Zara felt her chest tighten again. On Ethros, most people stayed within their social circles. The idea of genuinely caring about strangers was foreign to her upbringing, yet it seemed natural to Alex. As weeks passed, their relationship developed in ways Zara hadn't expected. Alex was nothing like the Ethrosian men she knew, who were either trying to impress her with their power or intimidated by her royal status. Alex treated her as an equal, someone whose thoughts and opinions mattered. He took her hiking in the mountains outside Seattle, where she experienced Earth's natural beauty without the filter of surveillance technology. The trees were taller than she had realized, the air was crisp and clean, and the view from the summit made her understand why humans wrote poetry about their planet. This is my thinking spot, Alex told her as they sat on a rocky outcrop, looking out over the forest. Whenever work gets really stressful, I come up here to remember that there's more to life than the hospital. Zara wanted to tell him about the crystal gardens of Ethros, where flowers sang in harmony and waterfalls flowed upward into the sky. Instead, she listened as he talked about his dreams of maybe opening a free clinic someday, where people could get medical care regardless of their ability to pay. The more time she spent with Alex, the more she realized how wrong her initial assessment had been. She had thought finding a human husband would be like completing an assignment. Locate a suitable candidate, convince him to marry her, endure the year, and return home. But Alex was becoming important to her in ways that had nothing to do with her mission. He remembered that she didn't like crowded restaurants and always suggested quiet places for dinner. When she mentioned missing her family, the one part of her story that was completely true, he shared his own experience of losing his parents in a car accident when he was in college. The hardest part wasn't the grief, he told her one evening, as they walked along the waterfront. It was feeling so alone in the world, like nobody really knew me anymore. Zara's heart ached as she realized how perfectly she fit the pattern of people who had left Alex. Soon, she would disappear from his life just like his parents had, leaving him to wonder what he had done wrong. But the worst part was discovering that her feelings for him were becoming real. When he worked late at the hospital, She found herself worrying about him when he laughed at her jokes. She felt proud and happy in ways that had nothing to do with successful manipulation. When he took her hand while they were walking, her pulse quickened with genuine attraction. 3 months into her exile, Alex surprised her with a picnic dinner on the roof of his apartment building. He had strung lights between the railings and spread blankets on the ground, creating a private space above the city lights. "I know this isn't as fancy as what you're probably used to," he said nervously, "but I wanted to do something special." Zara looked around at his thoughtful preparations and felt tears threatening to spill over. On Ethros, royal suitors had tried to impress her with expensive gifts and elaborate displays of wealth, but none of them had ever put this much personal thought into making her happy. "It's perfect," she whispered, and meant it completely, as they lay on the blankets looking up at the stars, which were barely visible through Seattle's light pollution. Alex pointed out the constellations he knew Zara could have told him about, the incredible nebulae and distant galaxies she had seen from Ethros. But instead she enjoyed seeing the night sky through his eyes. "Riley," he said quietly, turning to face her, "I know we haven't been together very long, but I feel like I've been waiting my whole life to meet someone like you." The sincerity in his voice nearly broke her heart. She was falling in love with him too, but everything about their relationship was built on lies. She was using his loneliness and trust against him, and the knowledge made her feel sick. "Alex," she started, wanting desperately to tell him the truth, but before she could continue, he leaned over and kissed her softly. In that moment, surrounded by his thoughtful preparations and genuine affection, Zara realized she was in serious trouble. This wasn't just about completing her punishment anymore. She was genuinely, deeply in love with a human who deserved so much better than her deception. 6 months after arriving on Earth, Zara's life had become something she never expected, genuinely happy. She and Alex had fallen into a comfortable routine that felt natural and right. He would text her good morning before his early hospital shifts, and she would have dinner waiting when he came home exhausted. They spent weekends exploring the city, watching movies, or just talking for hours about everything and nothing. But underneath this happiness, Zara carried a growing weight of guilt that threatened to crush her. Every kiss felt like a betrayal. Every time Alex told her he loved her, she wanted to disappear. The worst part was that her feelings for him were completely real now. She loved him more than she had ever loved anyone. The crisis came on a Tuesday evening that started like any other. Alex had been working a particularly difficult shift, losing a patient despite hours of trying to save him. He came home to his apartment looking defeated and exhausted. Zara had learned to recognize these moods over the months they had been together. She made his favorite tea, ran him a hot bath, and simply held him while he processed the day's emotions. This was another thing that amazed her about humans, their ability to care so deeply about strangers that losing them caused real pain. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm strong enough for this job," Alex said quietly as they sat on the couch together. "Today was it was a kid, Riley, 7 years old. We did everything right, but it wasn't enough." Zara felt his pain as if it were her own. She wanted to comfort him, but she also felt like a fraud. Here was this man who dedicated his life to saving others, sharing his deepest fears with someone who had been lying to him from the very beginning. "You save more people than you lose," she said, stroking his hair. "That little boy was lucky to have you fighting for him, even if the outcome wasn't what we wanted." Alex looked at her with such gratitude and love that Zara felt her heart breaking. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" he whispered. "I don't know what I did before you came into my life." That night, as Alex slept beside her, Zara stared at the ceiling and made a decision that terrified her. She couldn't continue this deception. Tomorrow, she would tell him everything, her real identity, the bet, her punishment, all of it. She would rather lose him to the truth than keep him through lies. She had it all planned out. She would take him to their special place by the water, explain everything carefully, and hope that somehow their love could survive the revelation. She even practiced the words, trying to find a way to make him understand that while their relationship had started as Manipulation. Her feelings had become completely genuine. But fate had other plans. The next morning, Zara woke up to find Alex already dressed and making breakfast. He seemed excited about something, which was unusual given how tired he had been the night before. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, kissing her forehead. "I have something I want to talk to you about tonight. Something important." Zara's stomach dropped. "What kind of something?" Alex grinned, looking more nervous than she had ever seen him. "It's a surprise, but I hope, it's going to change everything for us." Throughout the day, Zara couldn't concentrate on anything. She had a terrible feeling that Alex was planning to propose, and the timing couldn't be worse. She was finally ready to tell him the truth, and he was about to offer her everything she was supposed to want. Her fears were confirmed when Alex's best friend, Jake, called her that afternoon. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this," Jake said, conspiratorially, "but Alex has been carrying around an engagement ring for 2 weeks. He's planning to propose tonight at that waterfront spot you both love. I just wanted to give you a heads up in case you needed time to prepare your reaction." Zara felt like she couldn't breathe. The waterfront was exactly where she had planned to confess everything to him. Now it would be the place where he offered her his heart, not knowing that she was about to destroy his trust forever. That evening, Alex was almost bouncing with nervous energy. He had made reservations at their favorite restaurant, and afterward, he suggested a walk along the water to watch the sunset. Zara felt like she was walking toward her own execution. The sunset was beautiful, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that reminded her of the crystal gardens back home. But instead of feeling peaceful, Zara felt sick with dread. Alex kept checking his pocket nervously, and she knew the ring was there, waiting. They reached their usual bench, the one where they had shared so many conversations and quiet moments together. Alex sat down and pulled her close, looking out over the water. "Riley," he began, and she could hear his heart pounding. "These past 6 months have been the best of my life. Before I met you, I thought I was happy just helping people at the hospital. But you've shown me what it means to really live, not just exist." Zara wanted to stop him, to tell him everything before he said words that would make her betrayal even worse. But her voice seemed to have disappeared. "I know we haven't been together very long," Alex continued, "but I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to come home to you every day, share all my victories and defeats with you, maybe even have a family someday." He slid off the bench onto one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. The ring inside was simple and beautiful, not expensive by royal standards, but clearly chosen with thought and love. "Riley Nova," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Will you marry me?" Looking down at his hopeful face, Zara felt her world splitting apart. This was exactly what she needed to complete her mission. All she had to do was say yes, marry him, and in 6 months she could return home to Ethros with her punishment fulfilled. But she also knew that accepting this proposal, while hiding her true identity, would be the cruelest thing she could do. To someone she loved, Alex deserved to know who he was really asking to marry. "Alex," she whispered, tears starting to flow down her cheeks. He misunderstood her tears as happiness and started to smile. "Is that a yes?" "I need to tell you something first," she managed to say. "Something important about who I really am." His smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" Zara took a deep breath, knowing that the next few minutes would either destroy their relationship or somehow, miraculously, make it stronger. "My name isn't really Riley Nova, and I'm not exactly from Earth." Alex's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "Riley, you're scaring me. What are you talking about?" So there, on the bench where they had shared so many perfect moments, Zara began to tell him the truth. She explained about Ethros, about the bet with her cousin, about her punishment and her mission to marry a human. She told him about her lost powers, her royal heritage, and how she had specifically chosen him based on months of observation. With each word, she watched Alex's face change from confusion to disbelief to hurt to something that looked like betrayal. When she finished, they sat in silence for what felt like hours. So our entire relationship, Alex finally said, his voice barely above a whisper, was just part of your punishment at first. Zara admitted, hating herself. But Alex, I fell in love with you. Really, truly in love. Everything I've felt with you has been real. Alex stood up slowly, still holding the ring box. How am I supposed to believe that? How do I know what's real and what's just part of your mission? The pain in his voice was worse than any punishment the royal court could have devised. Zara had broken the heart of the best person she had ever known, and there might be no way to fix it. The days after Zara's confession were the darkest of her life. Alex had walked away from their bench without another word, leaving her sitting alone as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. She had returned to her small apartment and waited, hoping he would call or text or somehow give her a chance to explain further. But her phone remained silent, for the first time since arriving on Earth. Zara truly understood what humans meant when they talked about heartbreak. It felt like a physical pain in her chest that never went away, making it hard to breathe or eat or think about anything except Alex's hurt expression. She tried calling him once, but he didn't answer. She considered going to the hospital, but she knew that would only make things worse. Alex needed space to process what she had told him, and forcing a confrontation would be selfish. A week passed with no contact. Zara spent most of her time staring out her window, watching the city continue its busy life while hers felt completely stopped. She had never experienced this kind of emotional pain before, and it gave her a new understanding of why humans wrote sad songs and poetry about lost love. On the 8th day, she made a decision that surprised even herself. She contacted the Ethrosian communication device hidden in her apartment and requested an immediate return home. The response came within hours. Prince Kel's face appeared in the holographic display, looking pleased and smug. Well, he said with a satisfied smile. I hear you've been having some difficulties with your human experiment. Ready to admit that I was right about their primitive emotional reactions. Just bring me home. Zara said quietly, the mission was a failure. I can't complete it. Kel's expression shifted to curiosity. What exactly happened? Our monitors detected elevated stress levels from your location. Zara didn't want to explain the whole story to her cousin, but she gave him the basic facts. She had revealed her true identity to Alex, and he had rejected her. There was no possibility of marriage now. Fascinating, Kel mused. So the human couldn't handle the truth about superior beings. How typically narrow-minded of their species. It wasn't like that, Zara snapped, feeling a fierce protectiveness toward Alex even now. He was hurt because I lied to him. Any person would react the same way. Which proves my point about emotional weakness, Kel replied smoothly. No matter. The Royal Council will be interested to hear about your failure. I'm sure they'll have thoughts about extending your punishment. The communication ended, leaving Zara alone with a horrible realization. She had been so focused on her own pain that she hadn't considered how her failure would be perceived back home. The council might decide that 1 year wasn't enough, that she needed more time to learn proper humility. But worse than that possibility was another thought that kept growing in her mind. Did she even want to go home anymore? For all the difficulties of living on Earth, she had experienced things here that she never could on Ethros. She had learned to appreciate simple pleasures like coffee and sunsets. She had made friends with the librarian at the university and the woman who ran the flower shop. Near her apartment, she had discovered that helping others, even in small ways, brought a satisfaction that all her royal privileges had never provided. And then there was Alex, even though he might never forgive her, even though she had lost him through her own mistakes. She couldn't imagine being in a different galaxy. From him, the thought of never seeing him again, never knowing if he was safe and happy, felt unbearable. 3 weeks after their confrontation, Zara was shopping for groceries when she saw a familiar figure. In the next aisle, her heart stopped as she recognized Alex's profile, but when he turned around, she was shocked by how different he looked. He had lost weight, his eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion, and his usual warm smile was nowhere to be seen. Their eyes met across the store, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Then Alex walked over slowly, his expression unreadable. "Hello, Riley," he said quietly. "Or, what should I call you now?" "Zara," she whispered. "My real name is Zara." "Zara," he repeated, as if testing how it sounded. "I've been thinking about everything you told me, about your planet, your punishment, all of it." Zara's heart pounded with hope and fear, and Alex ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she knew meant he was struggling with difficult emotions. "I talked to my therapist about it. Yeah, I have a therapist," he added with a weak smile. "Started seeing her after my parents died." "What did she say?" Zara asked carefully. "She helped me understand something," Alex said. "I've been so afraid of people leaving me that I never really examined why they left. My parents didn't choose to die in that car accident. My college girlfriend didn't break up with me because I wasn't good enough. We just wanted different things. And you didn't set out to hurt me." Zara felt tears beginning to form. "But I did hurt you. I lied to you about everything." "You did," Alex agreed, "and that really messed me up for a while. But I've been thinking about the person you were when we were together, the way you listened when I had bad days, how you remembered things that mattered to me, the way you cried during sad movies and laughed at my terrible jokes. All of that was real," Zara said urgently. "I know you have no reason to believe me, but my feelings for you were completely genuine." Alex studied her face for a long moment. "I think I do believe you, because the person I fell in love with couldn't have faked that kind of kindness. But, Zara, I need to understand something. If we tried again, would you be staying on Earth permanently? Or would this still be temporary?" The question hit Zara like a lightning bolt because she realized she already knew the answer. "I want to stay," she said without hesitation. "Not because of my punishment or my mission. Because this is where I belong now. With you, if you'll have me." "What about your planet, your family?" Zara thought about the crystal palaces and floating gardens of Ethros, about her royal title and the luxurious life she was giving up. "I'll miss some things about home," she said honestly. "But I've learned more about myself in 1 year on Earth than in 24 years of royal life. This is where I want to build my future." Alex was quiet for so long that Zara started to worry he was going to walk away again. Finally, he spoke. "I can't just pretend the last few weeks didn't happen," he said. "Trust isn't something you can rebuild overnight. But if you're really committed to staying, to being honest with me about everything, maybe we could try starting over." "Starting over?" Zara asked. Alex extended his hand formally. "Hi, I'm Dr. Alex Chen. I work at Seattle General Hospital. I drink too much coffee. And I have a weakness for science fiction movies. What's your name?" Through her tears, Zara laughed and took his hand. "I'm Princess Zara of Ethros, but my friends call me Zara. I'm learning to be human. I make terrible Earth food. And I'm falling in love with your planet." "Nice to meet you, Zara," Alex said, and his real smile finally returned. "Would you like to have coffee sometime and tell me about your home planet?" "I promise to try to believe whatever impossible things you tell me." 6 months later, Zara and Alex had a small wedding in the same park where she had first confessed the truth to him. She wore a simple dress that Alex's sister had helped her pick out, and Alex wore his father's tie for luck. Instead of traditional vows, they wrote their own promises. Alex promised to love her for exactly who she was, alien princess and all. Zara promised to choose him and Earth every day, even when missing home felt overwhelming. As they kissed to seal their marriage, Zara realized that Prince Kale had been wrong about almost everything. She hadn't proven that humans were weak or primitive. Instead, she had discovered that they possessed the greatest strength of all, the ability to forgive, to grow, and to love someone completely despite their flaws. The alien princess had lost a bet and been punished with exile. But in losing everything she thought she wanted, she had found everything she actually needed. Sometimes the best punishments turn out to be the greatest gifts, and sometimes falling in love means finding yourself in the process.